for season 5, folks.
I wanted to speak first today to a group called SNAP. They used to be called MPA early on. But in 2011, this group came together. Dave Murray and other people at Vandu helped the group meet weekly at Vandu. And they approached me when they first started up and said that they wanted to write their own history. They wanted to write about their experience of being the first people in Canada to be legally prescribed heroin-assisted treatment, as it was called back then. Because they had been on the Naomi clinical trial, but when the trial ended, they were left to their own devices again, and they were doing rather poorly when they were no longer receiving their safe supply. Anyway, I worked with them for over 9 years, and unfortunately, Dave has passed away, and so has Greg and other people that helped to facilitate those weekly meetings. So I'm going to talk a little bit about them and then the history. But they were an independent group, SNAP. And as I said, they were the first people in Canada to receive a safer supply of heroin or hydromorphone. They came together to advocate for heroin-assisted treatment and other diverse safe supply. Their members had endured a lifetime of both legal and social discrimination. But their goals have been left unmet, even today, because one of their goals was setting up alternative and permanent safer supply programs that were less medicalized, including compassion clubs for people to go to access safer supply. SNAP wrote about the stability and the quality of life that they experienced when they were receiving a safer supply. And they helped to launch a charter challenge so that others could receive the same drugs that they did legally. And through media rallies, conferences, and articles, and events like today, they asked for less medicalized programs. And they made clear that every tool in the toolbox is needed to stem the harms from prohibition and our punitive policies. And as one SNAP member said, providing a legal, safer supply can save people because we are worth it. Well, we know over 6 preventable deaths a day occur in BC due to the poison and illegal drug supply. And it's a travesty that we're here today. The arrest of DULF's founder speaks to the failure of our healthcare system and the police to protect people who currently use criminalized drugs. And for those people who volunteer and work in harm reduction services and drug user unions who provide essential services to those who are most marginalized in our society. And Gina already talked about the fact that a new report came out from the coroner's office yesterday, or on November 1st, and it clearly stated that a medical model alone is not capable of addressing this crisis, this ongoing crisis, and that in order to save lives, non-medical models also need to be set up and supported. Well, DULF was created by conscientious people, Jeremy and Eris along with others, to fill this crucial gap in our services. Compassion clubs are life-saving services, and DULF founders are now part of a long history of civil disobedience in Canada. Let's remember, though, that laws and policies are not static or fixed. They change over the course of history. But civil disobedience is often the cornerstone of change. Just as women protested for the right to vote, the right to higher education, my life would have been very different if they hadn't done so. And Indigenous peoples in Canada have resisted the punitive policy laws and systemic racism of colonialism and white supremacy and the violence that stems from that. And we should keep in mind that our first drug laws were actually a section of the Indian Act in the 1860s and applied only to those labeled status Indian by the Canadian government. And it criminalized the use of non-medical opiate and alcohol use. And it was used as a mechanism of social control to criminalize Indigenous people in what is now called Canada. And we know that our drug laws continue to impact Indigenous people far more than their white counterparts. And we know now that parents, women, are more likely to have their child apprehended and their families torn apart by child protection and welfare laws. So I want to say that our drug laws shape and influence other policies, whether it be child protection, welfare, housing, the health services that we can receive as well. Our punitive drug laws, rather than protecting Canadians, have long contributed, as we've heard, to colonialism and white supremacy, race injustice, and class and gender discrimination. Everyone who's volunteered at some of our harm reduction and drug user services are at risk for arrest. But people with lived experience are the ones that are calling out for a change in drug policy and should be at the table always with us, as well as those who grieve the loved ones that they've lost, these preventable deaths that continue. Over the years, many of us have experienced a lot of grief, especially in the downtown east side, but elsewhere too. The unimaginable sorrow that families and friends suffer when their loved ones die from a preventable death, what we used to call a drug overdose death, and now we link it to the poison illegal drug supply. And these deaths are due to a failure of our government at all levels and the healthcare system and our criminal justice system as well. I personally have lost my two older sisters, best friends, and treasured colleagues over these decades. I wish they had had access to a compassion club. They might be alive today. But as we know, for all of us who want to see change, I'll take the title that Bud Osborne, a co-founder of Vandu, and Donald McPherson, drug policy advocate, and myself wrote, "Raise shit." Yeah! Social action saves lives, and that is what DULF and Vandu and other groups are all about. Thank you.